Okay, well, thanks, Savannah, for that, and thanks everybody for coming on. Yep, we're going to obviously explore some tracks and sign and learn some kind of ins and outs and basics of what will help you hopefully identify tracks and have a greater appreciation of what you're seeing outside when you're in your driveway or in a parking lot somewhere or in the woods and the deepest wilderness. You can basically track anywhere. Um, Very briefly, just about my background before we start. I've been with the Park Service about 25 years now. I've worked in several parks across the country and currently work for this group called the Northeast Temperate Network, which you can see here. It's a division of the Park Service that we help parks basically understand the condition of their natural resources within the park. So for the Northeast, we work with 13 national parks here from Maine, Acadia, all the way down to Morristown, New Jersey, where Morristown National Historical Park is, and there's about 11 other parks in between there we work with as well. Helping basically keep track of things like forest health, water quality, breeding land bird populations in the park, things of that nature that really are important things for the park managers to understand how they're doing, and we can basically give them the information they need to make the most informed decisions about how best to move forward with management of those populations. So it's a really interesting position, and we've been doing it since about 2006 in the park. So it's a relatively new program, believe it or not, within the Park Service. But moving on to what we're here to talk about today is, of course, wildlife tracking. And as I said, it's something that you can really do anywhere, which is one of the reasons that I really like it. Another reason I really like it as well is that you don't really need any special equipment to be a tracker. Obviously helpful to have some guidebooks when you're first starting out, but after you learn some basics and you can go out, you don't need anything out there except your senses. Just your eyes, obviously, help see tracks and sign. Your sense of touch, you can go over and feel markings on trees and other things that have been left behind by animals. Sense of smell comes in as well too. Scent marking by animals you can pick up even without seeing any tracks or sign nearby, and you can understand when animals have been nearby. Hearing as well. Animals make all sorts of different kinds of sounds. Red fox here are notorious for the different kinds of sounds that they make. And you can track, just in your house at night with the windows open sometimes, and understand what animals are nearby. So again, that's one of the reasons that I really enjoy, being able to share tracking experiences and learn about them more myself. And often kind of equate being a tracker with being a detective. You are using, your senses to solve different mysteries. And over the past, 20 years at least or so, there's been a TV program out there called CSI, Crime Scene Investigations. And I kind of, even though they do use a lot of special equipment there with all their, special lights and, DNA analysis and all that kind of stuff, they're kind of doing the same thing. But, when you're a tracker, you don't need to use any of that stuff, but you're still, basically one and the same in the sense that you are part of a TSI unit, which I call Track and Sign Investigations. And these are all the animals that left those signs around that we see in this opening slide here. And we'll have a chance to explore some of these. Unfortunately, we don't have time to explore all of these animals on here today, but this is some of the things that we're going to learn about today, and some of the sounds as well that you would hear in the Northeast. This is the New England edition, just because that's where we're based, but I can see that people from not just New England are on the call, which is great. And a lot of these animals are not just in New England; they're all over the place as well too. So we don't need, don't feel like you're not going to be able to see these in other parts of the country as well. And just like any good detective, it's good to have your list of usual suspects before you kind of, go out on the trail. you don't really want to be searching for something that isn't in the area. Like here, grizzly bears aren't a part of our ecology here, so wouldn't make much sense to be looking for them in this area. So it's a good idea to know at least what's in your neighborhood. And it can be kind of an intimidating list when you look at something like this, but just like you are somewhat similar, whether you want to admit it or not, to your relatives, your parents, aunts, uncles, cousins. So are animals, and they share a lot of similar aspects as far as how many toes they have on their feet, how they like to walk, how they like to run, what habitats they're in. So when you kind of split it into those different categories, it's not quite as intimidating when you just look at the mustelids or the weasels. All these animals share similar traits. Same with the rodents order. All the rodents have similar foot morphology and a similar way that they like to move in a lot of ways. Same with the canid family, the dogs, all the foxes and coyotes that we have here, the cats that are in the area. They're all somewhat related in the way that they are. So breaking down a big list into smaller chunks can sometimes make it less intimidating, and also helps you kind of eliminate certain suspects when you're looking at a track or sign. And we're going to use, I think we'll probably have time to at least do 3 or 4 of these, and then hopefully at the time, be some time at the end where we can have maybe a couple of requests where people can ask. But I just want to use some of these to point out some kind of rule of thumb things that we can do no matter where you're tracking. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in with the first one that I always find fun to track here in the Northeast, and they are a very interesting and capable animal. Some people call them fisher cats, especially in the Northeast, but they are, technical term is just fisher for them. With other parts of their range, like Montana and Oregon, nobody says fisher cat there. It's definitely a local thing for the Northeast, it seems to be. And they are the largest member of what we call the weasel family here in the Northeast. Can be surprisingly large sometimes. There was one trapped here in the Northeast at 20 pounds about a decade ago or so. Most of them are much smaller than that. Males are larger than females for sure, almost twice the size. But even a male of 13 pound is a large one. Usually they're closer to 10 or 12 pounds, and females again about half of that, which is handy again when you're tracking them, just to know if you see an extra large fisher track, you have a pretty good idea that it's a male. And you can see here in this photo, these are 2 tranquilized animals that are part of the study. You probably can guess the one on the right is a male, and the one on the left is a female. They're both fully grown adults. So very clear to see that the size difference between the 2 of them. Not only do they have just different size, they have a different morphology too, a different way that they're built. The top skull is a female skull, and the bottom one is a male skull. The biggest difference you might notice is this ridge on the top of the male skull. It's called a sagittal crest, and it's actually where muscles attach, jaw muscles. There's muscles that run all the way along the side of the skull here and attach there and go down to the jaws, which means that the male has a much more powerful bite than the female. And when you're tracking, this only comes in handy just because males might go after larger prey than females as well too. Things like porcupines, for example, are something that a male might be more apt to go after than a female, just because of the size difference and the more powerful jaws that they have. This is actually a diorama of a fisher with a porcupine that's stuck up in a tree there. They don't always go after porcupines. Porcupines obviously have a pretty good defense, but fishers are one of the few animals that will actively hunt them when necessary. And when you're tracking, there are ways, good things to know, especially if you're looking at guidebooks. It's always handy to know how many toes each animal has on their front and hind feet. For the weasel family, it's 5 on the front and 5 on the rear. I'm not going to focus too much on that just because, well, it's good to know. I find it more helpful, especially when you're first starting out, is to learn more about the tracks and the trail patterns that certain animals like to use, rather than focusing too much on the individual feet and toes and that kind of thing, and if claws show or not. Yeah, all really good stuff to know. But in general, sometimes it's more helpful just to be able to see a pattern in the snow. For example, this background image is very snowed over and blown over. You're not seeing any details at all in there. But if you knew track patterns, you would know. This is just a background image I have, I think, for all of them. So it's not actually a fissure. It is snowshoe hair. And then, once you get to know the patterns, you notice these two front feet here and two hind feet here that go through. But, if you knew how many toes you had and that kind of thing, it wouldn't be that kind of helpful. So, learn that stuff, but don't focus on it too much when you're first starting out. Because, perfect tracks like you see here of this fissure don't often arise. And you're lucky when you have those perfect tracking days. They're few and far in between most winters, and a lot of times you don't have a chance to see perfect kind of tracks like this where you can see clearly all 5 toes and the heel pads and all those kinds of things. So, I wouldn't worry too much about that on there, but again, just a good thing to be able to look at and understand. Googling images of feet is always a good thing to do. These are just images I pulled off the internet as well too, of fissure feet, part of a study. Even though you don't often get these perfect tracks, it's helpful to have that image in your mind of perfect tracks, because then when they're not perfect, like you see in the background there, you can still kind of use that as a search image in your mind to look for certain trails and patterns out there, even though you're not seeing the most perfect image every time when you're out there tracking. And these are the more important things that I find when tracking, is to learn these styles that they like to go. Trackers might call them a gait, a G-A-I-T, the gaits that certain animals use to travel with. And one of the common ones for weasels, again, fissure are a weasel, is what's called the 2x2 lope. Again, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't worry too much about lopes and trots and gallops and all those kinds of things. There really isn't any set 100% across the board language that all trackers use and all books use for the same thing. So some might call something a lope and some might call it a trot or a bound or something else. So don't worry about it too much. Again, just focus more on what you're seeing here, and the numbers in the front are helpful because it's called 2x2 probably for an obvious reason. You're seeing a set of 2 tracks here, a set of 2 here, and a set of 2 here. What's probably not obvious looking at it is that each hole in the snow actually represents where a front foot and a hind foot landed, which is a little bit hard to picture in your mind. But essentially what happened is substrate plays a big role in how animals move through their territory. Substrate meaning what they're moving through. So an animal moving through deep snow is going to move a lot different than an animal moving through relatively shallow snow. And this is kind of a mid-range amount of snow here. Think about as a wild animal, conservation of energy, of course, is very important when you don't know where your next meal is coming from. So moving as efficiently as possible through your territory in search of food is very important. And anybody who's ever gone for a walk in the snow with a friend or a group of people, especially deeper snow, if somebody's moving in front of you, it makes a lot of sense for you to use the holes in the snow that they just made with your legs rather than make brand new holes in the snow for yourself, because you use a lot less energy when somebody in front of you is breaking trail. And it's similar for animals that have 4 legs, 4 feet. Why break ground for all 4 feet when you've just broke trail perfectly with your front 2 feet? Might as well have your hind feet use those exact same holes, because over the course of a day when you're traveling miles and miles, that can save a significant amount of energy. When the snow's a little bit shallower or different substrate, obviously when you can't even see tracks, when there's nothing out there to look at, a lot of times they'll be traveling in a different gait, maybe a faster gait as well. One of the rules of thumb for tracking any animals, not just fissure, is that for sets of tracks like these, which you see is called a 3x4, the reason being, sometimes you kind of see 4 individual tracks, and sometimes they're kind of clumped up together enough where it only looks like there's 3 there. What you're actually seeing now is individual tracks. here's a front track, basically the front right track, and that's the front left track. And in between is the rear right and the rear left and rear right. Because the rule of thumb I was saying is that the faster an animal goes, the farther the rear feet land in front of the front feet, which to our mind, our minds don't really work like that. When you look at this, when you're first starting out, you probably thought these are the front feet and these are the hind because, obviously they're in the front and those are in the back. But the way it works, as the animal pushes off with its front 2 feet, and the faster it goes, these hind feet keep landing further and further in front of the front feet. And hopefully, and here's just another good view of that as well too. Where these are the front 2, and you can see clearly that this track actually landed on top of this track here. So this is actually a hind foot coming down and landing on top of that front foot, and another hind foot there. And I'm gonna hopefully we're gonna be able to see a video of tracks here. This used to be a lot easier back in the day when the Park Service allowed us to have Apple QuickTime on their computers, but unfortunately they don't allow that anymore for some reason. It must be some kind of weird security thing. So now I have to try to work with these other video platforms. But let's see if this works. Savannah, can you see this video on the screen right now, or is that not showing up?
No, I don't see a video playing per se. Okay. I do see like on the screen though.
Yeah, that's fine. Sometimes I'm able to figure that out as well too. Let's see here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I don't want to use up too much of our time with these technology issues, which are unfortunate. I know there is a way to show just the video. Let's see here. I don't want to stop the video. Webcam, nope. Oh, wait a minute, maybe event sharing options, no. All right, well, again, apologies. This used to work a lot better, but it doesn't anymore. So we're just gonna have to use our imaginations a little bit more. But what I do recommend, no matter what, is every day, every year, of course, more and more videos are being uploaded to the internet, and you can just Google things like fisher lope or fisher running, or fox running or coyote or whatever, and you can find lots and lots of different videos out there. And I highly recommend doing that as well, because when you do come across scenes like this in the woods, you now actually almost have kind of like the theater of the mind experience, where you can visually actually see the animal kind of running in front of you when you see these kind of tracks in the snow, because you've seen it online or a video of it someplace many times. And the more and more you look at things like that, and kind of try to commit them to memory, the more success you're going to have being able to picture these things when you see them out in the wild, which is really cool once that kind of stuff starts to click in, because again, it really enhances your experience when you're out there. This is just kind of what I call a special case study for our CSI stuff that we do, just because you follow animals around, you're going to find them doing all sorts of things out there that are interesting. And one thing that animals this time of year, especially in the Northeast or any place where there's winter, have struggle finding is unfrozen water. So anytime I find come across a brook or a stream or an unfrozen area, it's just fun to explore around there to see if you do see signs of animals around there. They can eat snow, of course, for water, but they'd much rather find liquid water, just because you can get a lot more water a lot more quickly drinking it than eating snow. You have to eat a lot of snow for that to provide the same amount of water, and also probably can cool their bodies down if they have to eat a ton of snow for water. Their body has to work that much harder to heat up. So it makes more sense to drink, even though the water's cold, it's a lot less of it than you'd have to eat for snow. And this is what we're seeing here. This fisher came right up to the edge of this brook here. That's its front 2 feet right there. So it came over, had a drink, and then moved on through the woods. So always fun to be able to see things like that when you're tracking. So and that's very similar. The track patterns you just saw. All these other weasels move in very similar ways. They're just different sizes, and there's a few things that are unique to each one. But those gaits, those 3x4 and those 2x2s, are very similar. For all the weasels. So we might as well move into a completely different family. And one of the common animals across the United States, not just here in the Northeast, is the red fox. Very fun animal and beautiful animal to track as well too. You'll see their signs all over the place as well this time of year. They do have this very thick kind of winter coat that they grow to obviously to keep warmer. For a lot of people, it's surprising to learn just how small red fox are. They're actually only anywhere from 8 to 15 pounds. A large red fox is 15 pounds. Most of them are a lot smaller than that. And you would think in our minds often we think that they're a lot bigger than they are. But even when just seeing one compared to this squirrel that it caught for dinner, or this mouse that this one's chasing, they're a lot smaller. When you compare them in size to some of their larger cousins, like the gray wolf. We don't have gray wolf here in the Northeast, but where they do share territory, you can see a red fox track compared to a gray wolf is very much different. These animals weren't actually all there at the same time. Somebody did a good job of with trail camera footage, blending them all together, cutting and pasting the animals there, so you can see just how much larger a gray wolf is than a red fox. It looks like the red fox can literally run underneath that gray wolf without rubbing its belly, and almost the same even with the coyote, but not quite as much. So vast size differences between the dogs of this family here. And not sure, hopefully we'll be able to hear this, because as I was saying in the beginning, red fox are one of the ones that you can actually track with your ears, because they are fairly vocal animals, and have a variety of different calls, from barks to yips to kind of the infamous red fox scream. I also want to add here as well, another kind of, along with calling fisher cats here in the Northeast, there's kind of the legend of the Fisher scream. And if you talk to any wildlife biologist that studies fishers, they will tell you fishers do not scream. They're fairly silent animals. They do make noises and growls and things like that, but they certainly do not scream. And it's almost always a red fox that are doing that scream when that's heard. And for whatever reason, it got associated with Fisher years and years ago, and it's just it's stuck with it, all these decades. But again, 99% of the time, that scream that people hear are red fox. Some other animals, might make sounds like that too. Bobcats and some other things can scream too, but a lot of times it's the red fox. So I'm going to try to play the sounds, and hopefully you'll be able to hear them. I've got apologies for technology issues, but let's give it a shot. This is a barking of a red fox. Hopefully that's coming through. And that's a scream, which a lot of people used to think was a red fisher, which can be disturbing to hear for sure for some people. And then there's a lot of sounds that they'll do when they're nearby each other, especially a mother with her kits, which I think is what this is. So again, one of those ones that you don't really need to go anywhere if you can hear them. You can track red fox and know that they're in the area. Red fox this time of year do grow a lot of fur on their feet. Which when you're tracking is important to keep in mind, because it means oftentimes those tracks could be kind of muted. It'd be similar if we put heavy gloves on or mittens and put our hands in the snow. Obviously our prints wouldn't be as clear as they would be without them. So that's something to keep in mind too. But even with the heavy fur on their feet, like you see here, there is this, some trackers will call it a chevron shape, some will call it a boomerang shape, but that still, will show up in their tracks, even when they're fully furred. It doesn't always show up, and it shows up much more prominently in the front track than the rear track. And so when it does show up, it's a very good indicator of that you're seeing the tracks of a red fox. Red fox, this is another view of that with a very prominent boomerang there. And it's important to kind of understand the way animals are built too. It helps understand kind of sometimes the tracks that you're seeing. When you look at the fox here, you can see, the rear end, its tail is hidden, but back there it's got a pretty fluffy, very light tail. And up front, it's got, of course, its neck and its head and its, muscles up there, everything that weigh a lot more. So it makes sense where there's more weight, you need bigger feet to help support that weight. So, most animals where there's more weight, and a lot of animals, it is the front, they have larger feet. And they usually leave more robust tracks. So these are, light tracks and mud here, but this is a front foot here. And a little harder to see because, again, it's not supporting as much weight, but this is a smaller hind track of a red fox here. So between the front and the rear, you have, that different size that helps you understand what you're seeing. And in here too, it's faint, but you can see, even this time of year, they do have relatively furry feet, and that will show up in the tracks. Here it shows up very well too. These are furry red fox feet. And you can see as well too, it's interesting here. So, claws in the dog family very often show, but they don't always show up all that well, especially in some kind of very shallow substrate. This is very, shallow mud here. And the claws don't sit directly on the ground. They sit up a little bit higher on the fox's toes. So, if it's shallow enough of a substrate, the claws won't always show. So sometimes when people see this, they automatically think cat, just because there's no claw marks that are easily visible. But that's not necessarily the case. You do go with more clues than you see there than just claws alone. And this is a couple of the trail patterns that red fox do. This most common one that they seem to prefer the most, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't seem like if it is in snow or even on pavement. A lot of times they'll do what's called the direct register trot. And by direct register, all that means is, similar to what we saw with the Fisher, each hole in the snow is a spot where a hind foot directly registered right on top of a front foot. Again, a lot of times that's for efficiency. Some people think it's also because, it could technically be a quieter way to travel. If you know where your front foot just landed and it didn't land on a twig or snap a branch or, make noise, and you're trying to move quietly, you can't really see where your hind foot is, as a fox. But if you put your hind foot right where your front foot just landed, it's not going to make any noise there either because it didn't when your front foot was there. So it's efficient and it can be quieter too. This we also see, obviously, something else was going on here. This is where a red fox scent marked. Scent marking, basically it's just it's urine that they spread throughout their territories, usually on spots where trails cross with other animals or kind of at the edge of their territory, or something that they want to mark for one reason or another. And red fox are one of the ones that you can sometimes even track without even seeing these scent marks, because they're pretty odoriferous. They smell very similar to skunk, believe it or not. Not quite as powerful as skunk, but very similar. If you're brave enough when you see this kind of stuff outside, you can certainly get down on your hands and knees and give it a sniff, and you'll smell that very skunky, musky scent odor. And that's another great indicator that you're smelling the sign of a red fox left behind. This is where one squatted. Sometimes you can tell the difference between a male and a female, just because obviously the way males and females are built. The female, a lot of times, this scent mark will be further back, like it is here. And the male, sometimes it lands a little bit further up front. So there's pretty good indication that this one that we're seeing here is a female fox that was moving through her territory. And visually, if you have a house cat that you see, just moving around the house or outside in the yard or wherever, they often use the same gait. They're very much direct register trotters here. And when you see it, it almost looks like the front, for in this case, the front left foot is connected by a cable to the rear right because they move in absolute synchronicity. When this right leg comes out, this when this left, what are we looking at here? So yeah, when that right leg comes out, this right foot is actually going to land right in that exact same spot that just came out of in this trot. And then this one eventually is going to move, as a fox moves, it's going to land in that exact same spot that this one just came out of. And it ends up being a very bouncy kind of gait when you see them visually doing it. Unfortunately, videos aren't working right now, so we won't be able to look at that. But again, I highly recommend that you do look that up. Animals will gallop as well too. A gallop, the rule of thumb that I use anyway with gallop is that anytime the rear feet land in front of the front feet, it's a gallop, completely land in front. These are the front 2 feet. You can see, if you look closely, that these are actually larger holes in the snow than these are. Again, front feet are larger. And they landed fully in front of the rear feet. They don't gallop, a lot, just for fun. Like if you own a dog, they'll gallop all the time out there. They have no worries about where their next meal is coming from. They're having fun. They're frolicking. They're going left and right and up and down and back and forth. A lot of times with wild animals, not only do they not gallop a lot, but when they do, usually they're going somewhere. They're either trying to get away from something or chasing something, or they got spooked and they want to move on. A lot of times, it's a very kind of business-like trail rather than a playful trail. Not always. Never say never, never say always when you're tracking, but most times this is what you're seeing is something like this, where it's very efficient, very straightforward. The reason this is called a transverse gallop is that the order of the footfalls basically is diagonal across the body. So what I mean by that, here is a front right track and a front left track, and then here's a rear right track and a rear left. So right, left, right, left. And this is a faster way to go, obviously, than a trot or a walk, but not the fastest way animals can go. There's a even faster gallop, which is known as the rotary gallop, and for whatever reason, when animals have their footfalls landed this way, this is the fastest they can go. When cheetahs are doing that 70-mile-per-hour gallop, they're using this rotary gallop. And what rotary means is it goes in order around the body, the footfalls. So here is a front right and a front left, and then a rear left and a rear right. So in this case, right, left, left, right. And oftentimes, this kind of space between can be a lot further than it is with the transverse gallop, because again, these animals are moving very quickly. Sometimes people call it a C gallop as well too, just because it's kind of a stretched out C as well, as opposed to kind of this double diagonal transverse gallop that you see here. So that's an indicator. And again, if you play with your dog outside and you throw something or whatever, just let them run around. If you look at their tracks afterwards, a lot of times you're going to see this rotary gallop. And this just shows again, this is a rotary gallop, and this shows just how far they can go. This is a red fox that was on a rotary gallop for the woods behind my house here, and there's a very large gap here where it flew through the air doing the rotary gallop because it was going so fast, which is really only what you see with the rotary gallop, is because it is the fastest way that they go. And red fox are a lot of fun to track just because of the way that they hunt as well too. This is a pretty amazing photo of a red fox, and what probably the last view of many meadow voles will ever have when they're looking at a red fox coming at them. Fox have pretty varied diets. They do have obviously the canines, but they do have molars as well too, so they can eat fruits and nuts and berries, as well as a lot of rodents is their primary diet, especially this time of year. With these big ears, they can hear rodents moving under the snow. Their long snouts mean they have a very good sense of smell too, so they have a very kind of large repertoire that they have with them when they're hunting. We're going to give it a shot. Savannah, let me know if this is going to be an issue. Not going to be able to hear it, but I'm going to try to play a video of red fox hunting out in North Dakota with a narration as well too. And it's pretty amazing if you've never seen the way they do it before. So let's try this.
The Black Hills of the Dakotas.
It's working.
Great.
Hidden under that icy blanket, field mice are stirring. The odds of catching anything might seem hopeless, but not to him. An enormous leap to catch a critter under 3 feet of snow. But how the heck did he do it?
It's a direct register right there.
He's homing in on something. But it takes immense concentration, and he needs complete quiet. His ears can pick up the faintest scamper from beneath the snow. But there's a catch. He almost always comes up empty-handed, unless he's facing north. But how's that possible? As unbelievable as it sounds, scientists now think he's actually homing in on the magnetic field of the planet, using it to calculate and plot his trajectory. The kind of math missiles use to hit their targets. Just the slightest distraction can throw him off. But if he's got the North Pole in his sights, he's guaranteed a meal nearly 75% of the time.
So that's pretty amazing. Not only the way they do that, but that whole kind of magnetic field of the Earth, being able to feel that as a kind of another sixth sense almost is pretty new to science. I didn't really know that that they were doing that, and amazing that that's just another sense that they have and another way that they can be successful when they're hunting. So we did the dog family. I think it's only fair that we go into the cat family, and might as well go with bobcat here. Bobcats are really, amazing, again, beautiful animal, and they do seem, at least in the Northeast here, seem to be becoming either more habituated with humans or, more common. Even just the past 3, 4, 5 years, anecdotally, I've been hearing a lot of people saying that they've been seeing more bobcats, just on social media and all that kinds of stuff. You see a lot more photos and experiences with them. So they seem to be doing well here in the Northeast, which is a good thing. And they can be fairly large. If you remember, a large red fox is 15 pounds. There was one, a bobcat caught in New Hampshire, that was 52 pounds. That is highly unusual. That's the record. But a large male can still push 30 pounds, which is again large for a bobcat, but they can be that big, much larger than red fox are. Males and females, again, much bigger difference. This is a male on the left and a female on the right. You can just tell by looking at them, which one's the male, which one's the female as far as size difference. I suppose I should mention as well too, a lot of these videos you're seeing are trail cameras that I've put up over the years. It's been quite a while now. I guess this one goes back to 2011. I can't recommend doing that enough either. And on your property or place wherever you have a chance to set them up. Just very exciting and a lot of fun to be able to put them out and to be able to see wild animals that are out there. The only thing I would say about them, there's so many of them, and a lot of them are different, great quality. But just make sure you get one with a microphone, because a lot of times, you'll be hearing something off camera that the animal's reacting to, or them talking to another animal that's not visible, and it just really enhances the experience when you actually have the audio part of that too. And speaking of audio, that's obviously a sound of an upset bobcat. Obviously, never approach any wildlife, but especially one that's making sounds like that. Bobcats do purr. I guess all cats of all species purr. Even lions will purr as well too. So that's a sound that they'll make as not an upset animal, but one that all cats seem to share. And as far as their toes go and their feet go, even in the winter, they don't actually grow fur on the bottom of their feet as much as fox do. So you can have clear prints even in winter. These are obviously in mud here, and they tend to leave very clear tracks here as well. The reason we're looking at the skull of this animal here is just because it goes to show what kind of senses that they're working with, and the most obvious thing on the skull is just the size of the eye sockets here. We're only seeing a very small portion of their eyes. When we're looking at them, underneath there's actually very large eyes, and as you all probably are aware, cats see very well in very dark conditions. The reason is that they do have these immense eyes that they're able to capture as much available light as possible, and a full moon night to them might as well be in the middle of the day compared to what we see. So that's why they are such efficient hunters at night as well too. No animal can see in pitch black, but even in low light conditions, animals with this kind of vision do very well. Cat tracks in general, are much different than other animals' tracks, especially animals in the dog family. Let's do a side-by-side comparison, just so we can see some pretty obvious differences between cats and dogs. This is a very nice coyote track that you see here. And as I was saying earlier, claws aren't always an indicator of what you're seeing, but most times claws do not show up in cat tracks. Most times this is relatively deep mud, and you're not seeing any claw tracks in there, unless you see these nice two sharp front claws of the coyote and very faint claw marks here from the side toes, which is one indicator between cats and dogs. Another one is that cat tracks are not symmetrical and dog tracks are. Especially wild dogs, coyotes especially. Here you have this beautiful kind of X marks the spot symmetry in this track, as opposed to the cat. You cannot do that. X marks the spot. It won't fold over on itself perfectly because they are not symmetrical. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at trying to distinguish between cat and dog tracks. Gray fox, I'm not sure if we'll have a chance to look at those today, but gray fox can leave somewhat similar tracks to a bobcat, but they are symmetrical. When you look at them closely, you'll notice that they're symmetrical. So that's again one thing to keep in mind when you're trying to distinguish between the difference. Another thing with cat tracks is they have this space between the heel pad and the toe pads where it makes a C shape that you can draw, which you wouldn't be able to do in the dog track. So C for cat, one thing, and another that's kind of unique to the cats is that if you look at this track and this track here as well too, there's two bumps on the top and three bumps on the bottom, which if you connect all three of those, that makes an M for meow for a cat as well. And then the dog tracks, there's usually only just this one bump on the top, even though they do have three in the bottom, but just one on the top. So you cannot do that M in dog tracks. So you have the C for cat and M for meow, and no cross on there. So it's there's a lot of things that you can kind of bring to the table when you're trying to figure out what you're seeing out in your yard. Another thing, bobcats and domestic cats leave very similar tracks. The biggest difference is size difference. Most bobcats are an order of about 2 inches in size, and most house cats are about an inch in size. So even though they look very similar, the size difference, especially this time of year when they're pretty much all adult animals, you can see a larger size track. Cats will use this. This is bobcat. This is in the national park in Woodstock, Vermont. I took this picture a few years ago. We actually saw this bobcat, and it was hunting squirrels that were underneath a porch on the park property. And when it saw us, it took off and ran away. And it wanted to get out of there fast. So this was it using, if you remember, this is that rotary gallop. This is a right front, and a left front, and a left rear, and a right rear. So right, left, left, right. This is that rotary gallop. So this one was moving quickly. And when you look at it closely, you can actually see claw marks in there too. This means that sometimes you do see claw marks in cat tracks, especially when it's trying to get a grip and run through this relatively slippery surface of snow. It can't put its claws out. So again, you don't always want to say never see claw marks in cat tracks. They do have different ways of walking as well too. Cats very often prefer the direct register. It's what you're seeing here on this side. Sometimes it's a perfect direct register where it only looks like one track, and sometimes it's a little bit, kind of didn't land perfectly on there. So this is 2 tracks as well, but it didn't land, quite perfectly on there. So it's almost like a double print. Here you're seeing a walk. They can walk, where one where the hind foot is landing in front of the front foot, which is a faster walk, which is what you're seeing here. So this is an overstep walk, as they call it, on the faster side. And then eventually, if you go farther enough here, you can see that it moved into that direct register eventually. So, kind of a bit of a slower and more natural gait for bobcats. Also, I want to point out you are seeing another track moving through here. This just goes to show size difference as well too. This actually just took this picture a couple weeks ago in New Hampshire. This is a gray fox that was moving through this same area here, and that's my feet. That's a size 12 boot. So pretty good size. I would guess this would have been a male bobcat moving through this area. Again, compared to that gray fox, which are even smaller sometimes than red fox. You can see just the size difference there. And bobcats, much like your house cat, they tend to be more of a patient hunter than some other animals. Like the fisher is a very active hunter, going through his territory and trying to see if it can rustle up a squirrel or whatever, and then chase it down. A lot of times a bobcat will go to a place where it knows there's good, good hunting, and it'll wait for the hunting to come to it rather than for it to go actively find it. So sometimes when you're following bobcat trails, you'll see signs like this through here, and if you kind of use your imagination, you can see what's happening there. This is a bobcat sit. This is its hind haunches right here, and its front 2 feet were here, and its rear feet here. And then it does appear that something kind of got its interest as it moves up there, because this is a very slow, you can tell it's slow because of how kind of narrow and how wide and how close these tracks are. It's a stalk. It was moving very slowly down the hill there, so maybe a squirrel or something it saw move through that area and it was going up to it. This is a similar pattern here, except this one it seems like it actually went all the way down, because it can see it kind of rear here, and then slowly worked its front feet forward until it was crouching all the way down. And here it almost seems like it took a little small leap to start moving forward, and then slowly made its way down. I did follow these tracks all the way down, and I did not see anything that hunted down there, so I'm not sure what it was that got its attention, but they have probably a better sense of what's going on around them than I do, for sure. All right, let's see, 12:53 here. I'm going to do quickly one more, and then we'll move quickly through this one just because it's so common in this area. It is the raccoon. They are everywhere, not just in parks, but in the downtown of the biggest cities in the world. New York City has plenty of raccoons as well. They do very well with humans. They can be big too. They can push 50 pounds in the rare occasions, but usually they're closer to that 12 to 15 to 20 pounds or so, something like that. And they are everywhere out there, as I said. Have very unique looking feet as well. Some people kind of call them sausage fingers. They can be kind of, look like stuffed sausages almost when you look at them like that. And their hind feet are longer than their front feet. They're almost kind of like, feet of humans. This is their front foot tracking the snow. This is their rear foot tracking the snow. They do have long fingers as well too, which sometimes show up very well in the tracks, and very sharp claws as well too. They use for climbing or digging. That show up most times in the tracks as well. Their gait is a little unusual. These when you see tracks like this is them in a very natural raccoon pattern, where a hind foot landed exactly next to a front foot. And I think I'm going to show you what that looks like here. So here, this is very typical. This one looks like it just got out of a wet area there, but that's when you have this kind of pattern here. The hind foot just landed exactly to the side of that front foot, which just leaves those paired ones there. And that's usually, it's a variation on a theme when they're moving. Just like we saw with the bobcat, there's an overstep walk and an understep walk, and it's nice with raccoons because of the size difference between their feet. Now this is, if you look closely, obviously a front foot and obviously a rear foot with a size difference. This might be what you call an overstep walk. It's a little bit faster. Again, even when walking, the rule of thumb is the farther a hind foot lands in front of the front foot, the faster the animal is going. Here, it's the opposite. This is maybe clear in this set here. This is a hind foot and a front foot. So this is an understep walk. So they will move, slowly. A slow walk, a fast walk, kind of the mid-speed walk. And they also do direct register as well too, believe it or not. The snow gets a little deeper. They'll do that same conservation of energy walk where the hind foot will land right in front where that smaller front foot was, and really just obliterates its track. This almost looks like, I can almost picture like an elf or something running through the snow. It's, it almost looks like little human feet going through when that happens. And I think I'll leave some time for questions. I think at this point, I think we went through quite a bit of different animals. Hopefully that gives you a good, basis if you're new to tracking, know what to look for when you're out in the snow or anywhere. Again, it doesn't have to. Snow is a great time, obviously, to do it, but you don't need snow to track. You can do it anywhere animals leave tracks. So Savannah, I'm not sure how you want to do questions or any requests. If we have time for one more visual one to look at or something like that, but.
I mean, yeah, if no one has any questions, we can just maybe do one more quickly. There's only 3 minutes left. It's whatever you want to do, but I'd like to see another one. So if you don't mind going over a little bit.
Sure. Maybe we'll do something completely different family just because, we've done all the other ones. I guess I mentioned it in the beginning, so might as well go with the rabbit family, the hare family, hares and rabbits. We do have both here in the Northeast. Snowshoe hare tend to be higher up in the spruce and fir forest kind of area, and cottontails are down in the lower sections. But they both move similarly. They just have very different morphology, different way they're built. Obviously snowshoes are called snowshoes for a reason. They have extremely large rear feet. You see this, the size of that snowshoe hare's rear feet, which as you would imagine, helps them stay on top of very deep snow a lot better than if they had, narrow feet. And this is the very typical rabbit and hare pattern, where the front 2 feet come down, and the rear they hop, and so the rear feet land in front of the front feet, paired like that. It's almost always one on top of each other for the front 2, and almost always 2 side by side like that. And you can see another good example of that here. here's kind of what it looks like visually, where the front 2 feet are down. They just made these 2 holes, and these rear feet stay paired and pushed down. When they're running away from something chasing them, they can get a lot of momentum when they push off with both the rear feet like that and get away from them. So here's where they pushed off like that. A lot of people confuse rabbits and hare tracks with squirrel tracks. And this is an example of gray squirrel tracks. The rule of thumb, again, never say never, never say always, but almost always, squirrel tracks leave paired front tracks and paired hind tracks. This is what you're seeing here. These front 2 paired and rear tracks paired here as well, which again is much different than what you see with both hares and rabbits. So that's something to keep in mind. That's not just gray squirrels, that's chipmunks, and that's red squirrels as well too. They all do that kind of paired front feet and paired rear feet as well. You will see feeding signs of them too out there as well. They do have very sharp, they are rodents, so they have these very sharp front 2 teeth where they can almost looks like garden shears kind of cut off the twigs and branches that they're feeding on when they're trying to get to buds of plants. And you'll see often associated with that, you will see, I think, even in this one, you can see some scat. They have very round pellet-like scats. Usually, right in the area that they're feeding, you'll find both of those things. You'll find the branches and the scat in that same area. And this just shows, when the skull is put together, how it is when they come down. It does have that very good slicing action on it. Again, here's where it's been cut, and there's the scat for them. We're not going to have time to go into too much detail here, but just hares and cottontails are very important to a lot of different animals for food, including fishers and foxes and coyotes, and even from the air, this is a goshawk, and hawks and owls will feed on them as well. But the most famous relationship between a hare and a predator is the lynx, which we do have some lynx in Vermont. They're very rare in the far northeast. Same with New Hampshire. Maine has a lot more lynx, where the lynx hare kind of ecology plays out. But that was just one more animal to keep an eye out for when you're out there.
Yeah, thank you. So are there no questions? You can just unmute and ask if you'd like as well, or just type it. But if not, we can just go ahead.
I do have a question. This is Susie. I am curious if the wildcats ever have any additional toes like domesticated cats do.
That's a good question. I don't imagine it's impossible. I think it's a lot more rare in wildcats than domestic cats. It's still fairly rare in domestic cats, but much more common than you'd see in the wild. Saying that, I've never seen that before, nor have I heard of somebody talking about it before. It's not impossible, I don't think, but I think it's extremely, extremely rare.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any more questions? Okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and end. Thank you so much, Ed, for doing this. This is really cool. And thank you, everyone, for coming. I'll be sure to send a follow-up email with the upcoming workshops because someone asked I just send an email with it. So I will send that out tomorrow. And then this will also be uploaded in the next few days if there's anything you wanted to go back to see. So yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.